At exactly 2:47 a.m., King Charles slipped out of his bedroom alone. No Camilla. No advisors. Just him and a flashlight. Security cameras caught him entering the old guard quarters through a side door that hadn't been opened in decades. What happened in that room changed everything. The guards who were there that night signed papers promising never to speak, but one of them kept a diary. And what he wrote will shock you. This is the true story of the king's secret meeting that the palace tried to bury. The rain hammered against the windows of Buckingham Palace that October night. Inside the royal bedroom, Camilla was fast asleep, her gentle breathing the only sound in the darkness. But beside her, the bed was empty. King Charles was gone. Down in the East Wing, a security guard named James Patterson was doing his routine rounds. He had worked at the palace for 12 years and thought he had seen everything. But nothing prepared him for what he saw at 2:47 a.m. when he turned the corner near the old servants' quarters. There, standing in the shadows, was the king himself. Charles was wearing a simple dark coat over his pajamas and holding a small flashlight. His face looked worried, almost scared. James froze. He had never seen the king wandering the halls alone at this hour. Something was very wrong. "Your Majesty," James whispered, bowing quickly. "Is everything all right? Should I call someone?" Charles put a finger to his lips. "No, I need you to gather Thompson, Williams, and Rodriguez. Bring them to the old guard room. The one near the kitchen that nobody uses anymore. Tell them to come quietly and tell no one else. This is a matter of national importance." James felt his heart racing. In all his years, he had never received such a strange order. But when the king speaks, you listen. He nodded and hurried off to find the other guards. 20 minutes later, 4 guards stood in the dusty old room. The space hadn't been used in over 30 years. Cobwebs hung from the corners, and old wooden chairs sat covered in dust sheets. Charles had lit a single lamp that cast long shadows on the walls. He looked at each guard carefully, studying their faces. "I need to know I can trust you," Charles said, his voice low and serious. "What I am about to tell you cannot leave this room. Not to your families. Not to your fellow guards. Not even to the other members of the royal family. Do you understand?" The guards exchanged nervous glances. Thompson, the oldest guard who had served the Queen for 20 years before her death, spoke up. "Your Majesty, we have sworn to protect this family. Whatever you need, we are here." Charles nodded slowly. He walked to the window and looked out at the dark gardens. For a long moment, he said nothing. The guards waited, the tension in the room growing with each passing second. 3 days ago, Charles finally began. "I received a letter. It was delivered to me personally, not through the normal channels. The envelope had no return address, no stamp, nothing. Someone had placed it directly on my private desk in the study that only Camilla and I use." Williams, a younger guard with sharp eyes, felt a chill run down his spine. That should have been impossible. The king's private study was one of the most secure rooms in the palace. "The letter contained information about my family," Charles continued. "Things that only a few people in the world could possibly know. Private conversations, personal details, medical information. But more than that, it contained a threat." Rodriguez shifted uncomfortably. "What kind of threat, sir?" Charles turned to face them. In the dim light, the guards could see that the king looked older than his years. The weight of the crown seemed to press down on his shoulders. "The letter said that someone close to me, someone I trust completely, has been passing information to foreign agents for years. It claims that this person has been paid enormous amounts of money to spy on the royal family. And the letter says that if I don't find out who it is within 2 weeks, the information will be released to the public." The room fell silent. This was bigger than anything the guards had imagined. This wasn't just about security. This was about betrayal at the highest level. "Why not tell MI5? James asked. "Surely they should handle something like this." Charles shook his head firmly. "Because the letter specifically mentions that someone in the intelligence services might be involved. I don't know who to trust anymore. That's why I came to you for. You have access to areas of the palace that others don't. You see things. You hear things. And according to your service records, Each of you has turned down bribes or refused to share information about the family in the past. Thompson stepped forward. What exactly do you need us to do, Your Majesty? Charles reached into his coat pocket and pulled out 4 small envelopes. He handed one to each guard. Inside these envelopes, you'll find the names of people who have regular access to my private areas. Family members, staff, advisors. I need you to watch them carefully. Notice anything unusual? Any strange meetings, unusual phone calls, unexplained absences. But you must be invisible. If whoever is doing this suspects that I'm investigating, they might destroy evidence or worse. Williams opened his envelope and scanned the list. His eyes widened. These weren't just random staff members. These were people at the very heart of the royal operation. People who had been trusted for decades. Sir Williams said carefully, some of these names. They're people who have served your family for their entire lives. Are you sure about this? Charles's face hardened. I don't want to believe it either. But the information in that letter was too specific, too detailed. Someone very close to me is a traitor, and I need to find them before they can do any more damage. Rodriguez raised his hand slightly. Your Majesty, why isn't the Queen? Why isn't Queen Camilla aware of this? Surely she should know? For the first time, Charles's voice cracked slightly. Because her name is on one of those lists. The guards stared at him in shock. The idea that Queen Camilla, the king's own wife, could be under suspicion was almost too much to process. I don't believe it's her, Charles added quickly, but I can't ignore the possibility. The letter made specific references to financial transactions connected to her charity work. It could be a frame job, someone trying to drive a wedge between us, or it could be true. Until I know for certain, I can't risk telling her. Do you understand how difficult this is for me? The pain in his voice was real. These guards had seen the king in many situations, but never like this. Never so vulnerable, so uncertain, James spoke up. How long do we have? 11 days, Charles replied. The letter gave me 2 weeks from the day I received it. If I don't identify the traitor by then, everything will be released to the media. My family will be destroyed. The monarchy itself might not survive the scandal. Thompson straightened up. Then we start immediately. We'll work in pairs, rotating shifts, so someone is always watching. We'll use the old security protocols, the ones that don't leave digital traces. Charles nodded gratefully. Thank you, all of you. I know this is asking a lot. You'll need to continue your regular duties while conducting this investigation. No one can know that anything has changed. What happens when we find the traitor? Rodriguez asked. Charles walked back to the window. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the sky was still dark. Dawn was still hours away. That depends on who it is, he said quietly. But justice will be served. One way or another. The guards stood in silence, understanding the gravity of what they had just agreed to do. They were now part of something that could change history. In 11 days, they would either save the monarchy or watch it crumble. Charles pulled out 4 more papers from his pocket. Before you leave, I need each of you to sign this. It's a confidentiality agreement. Breaking it would be considered treason. One by one, the guards signed their names. As James put down the pen, he couldn't help but wonder what they would discover in the days ahead. And he wondered if the truth, when they found it, would be something they wished they had never learned. Remember, Charles said as they prepared to leave, trust no one, question everything, and report directly to me every night at this same time. Use the old service elevator near the kitchen. No phones, no emails. Only in person. The guards nodded and filed out of the room silently. Charles waited until they were gone, then sat down heavily in one of the dusty chairs. He put his head in his hands. Somewhere in his own home, someone he trusted was betraying him, and he had just 11 days to find out who. The next morning, everything appeared normal at Buckingham Palace. Tourists gathered outside the gates for photographs. Staff members hurried through their duties, and King Charles sat at breakfast with Camilla, reading the newspaper as if nothing had happened. But the 4 guards knew better. They had split into pairs as planned. James and Thompson would focus on the family members and close advisors. Williams and Rodriguez would watch the household, staff, and anyone with access to the private areas. The first day revealed nothing unusual. People followed their routines. Meetings happened on schedule. Phone calls seemed ordinary. But on the second day, Williams noticed something strange. He was standing near the king's study when he saw Margaret Chen, the king's personal secretary for 15 years, making a phone call in the hallway. Nothing odd about that, except Margaret always used her office phone for calls. She was old-fashioned that way. But here she was, using her personal mobile. She kept looking around, nervously as she spoke. Williams pretended to check a painting on the wall while listening carefully. Margaret spoke in hushed tones. "I can't get it yet," she whispered. "He keeps it locked now. Something has changed. He's being more careful." Williams felt his pulse quicken. What was she trying to get? And who was she talking to? Margaret ended the call quickly when another staff member walked by. She smoothed her skirt and hurried back to her office, her face flushed. Williams made a mental note to share this with the others that night. Meanwhile, James had discovered something equally troubling. He was reviewing old security footage from the past month. Something he could do without raising suspicion as part of his regular duties. What he found made his blood run cold. On 3 separate occasions in the past 4 weeks, Lord Henry Ashford, a close friend of the family and frequent visitor, had arrived at the palace at odd hours. Each time he met briefly with someone in the gardens. The meetings lasted only a few minutes, and the other person's face was never clearly visible on camera. They always wore a hood or stood in shadows. After each meeting, Lord Ashford would go inside for his scheduled appointment with Charles, acting as if nothing had happened. But why would a respected nobleman need secret meetings in the dark? And who was he meeting with? That night at 2:47 a.m., the 4 guards returned to the old room. Charles was already waiting, sitting in the same chair. His eyes were tired, but his expression was alert. "Report," he said simply. Williams spoke first, telling the king about Margaret's suspicious phone call. Charles listened carefully, his fingers drumming on the armrest of his chair. "Margaret has been with me since I was Prince of Wales," Charles said slowly. "She knows everything about my schedule, my correspondence, my private papers. If she's involved, the damage could be catastrophic." "Out." Thompson cleared his throat. "There's something else, Your Majesty. I checked Margaret's financial records. We have access to basic information for all senior staff. 3 months ago, she paid off her mortgage completely. The house was worth over £1 million. Charles sat up straighter. "On her salary? That's impossible." "Exactly," Thompson continued. "When I looked deeper, I found she also bought her daughter a flat in London. Cash payment. No mortgage. That's another £500,000 at least." Duh. The room fell silent. The evidence against Margaret was mounting. But Charles wasn't ready to draw conclusions yet. "What else?" he asked, looking at James. James pulled out his phone and showed the king the footage of Lord Ashford's secret meetings. Charles watched, his face growing darker with each frame. "Henry," Charles muttered. "We've been friends since university. He was at my wedding. Both of my weddings. He's godfather to one of my grandchildren. Should we confront him?" Rodriguez asked. Charles shook his head. "Not yet. We need more proof. If we're wrong, we'll destroy innocent people. If we're right but move too soon, the real culprit might escape." He stood up and paced the small room. "What about the others on the list? Anyone else showing suspicious behavior?" Williams consulted his notes. "Edward, your private chef, has been making trips to a storage facility in South London. He goes there twice a week, always at night after his shift ends. We don't know what he's storing there." And James added, "Your assistant private secretary, David Morrison, has been having meetings with a journalist from the Telegraph. They meet in a cafe in Chelsea. Always the same cafe, always Thursday afternoons." Charles ran his hand through his hair. "David has access to almost everything. And a journalist? That could be our leak right there." "There's more," Thompson said quietly. "I found something about Queen Camilla." The room went completely still. Charles turned slowly to face Thompson, his expression unreadable. "What did you find?" Charles asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Thompson pulled out a folder. "Your Majesty, I didn't want to look into this, but you gave us orders. 3 weeks ago, the Queen made a private withdrawal from her personal account. £50,000 in cash. She didn't tell her financial advisors about it. She went to the bank herself." Charles's face went pale. £50,000? For what? "We don't know," Thompson admitted. "But 2 days later, she had a meeting at a hotel in Mayfair. She went alone. No security, no staff. She was there for 2 hours. We checked the hotel records through our contacts. The room was booked under a false name." Charles sat back down heavily. His worst fear was becoming real. The woman he loved, the woman he had fought so hard to marry, might be the one betraying him. "There has to be an explanation," Charles said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Camilla wouldn't do this." "She couldn't, Your Majesty," Williams said gently. "We're just reporting what we found. We don't have all the facts yet." Charles nodded slowly. "Continue investigating everyone. But be extra careful with Camilla. If she's innocent and discovers what we're doing, it will break her heart. And mine." Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. "Sir, we have 8 days left. Should we start narrowing down our suspects? We can't watch everyone closely enough." Charles thought for a moment. "Focus on Margaret Chen and Lord Ashford for now. They have the most suspicious activity. But keep monitoring the others. And one more thing." He reached into his jacket and pulled out another envelope. "I received a second letter today." The guards exchanged worried glances. Charles opened the envelope and read aloud, "You're looking in the wrong places. The one you trust most is the one who wants to hurt you most." Tick-tock, Charles. 8 days remaining. "They know we're investigating," James said. "Whoever sent this knows we're looking?" "Which means," Thompson added, "they're watching us too." The implication hung in the air like a dark cloud. If the traitor knew about the investigation, they were either incredibly well informed or they were in this very room right now. The thought made everyone uncomfortable. Charles stood up again. "We proceed as planned. But from now on, vary your patterns. Don't meet at the same times. Don't use the same routes through the palace. And trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is." As the guards prepared to leave, Charles called out to James, "Wait, I need to show you something," after the others left. Charles pulled out his phone and showed James a text message. It was from Camilla, sent at 2:15 a.m. that night, just half an hour earlier. "Where are you? I woke up and you were gone. I'm worried. Please come back to bed." "She knows I'm lying to her," Charles said quietly. "She can tell something is wrong. We've been married long enough. She knows." James didn't know what to say. He had never seen the king look so broken, so defeated. "What if it is her?" Charles asked, almost to himself. "What if the woman I love has been betraying me this whole time? How do I come back from that?" "Your Majesty," James said carefully, "we don't know anything for certain yet. Don't give up on her before we have all the facts." Charles looked at him with sad eyes. "In 8 days, I'll have all the facts. I'm just not sure I want them anymore." James left the king sitting alone in the dark room, staring at his phone. Reading and rereading Camilla's worried message. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking over London. Another day was beginning at Buckingham Palace. Another day of secrets, suspicion, and lies. Back in his quarters, James lay in bed but couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Thompson had said. They were being watched. The traitor knew about the investigation, which meant every move they made was probably being reported. Back to whoever was behind this, the question was no longer just who was the traitor. The question now was whether they would find the truth before the traitor found them. 5 days remained. The tension inside Buckingham Palace had become unbearable, at least for those who knew what was happening. The 4 guards continued their work. What they discovered in the next 3 days would shock everyone. Williams decided to follow Margaret Chen more closely. On the 3rd day of surveillance, he watched her leave the palace at 6 p.m., earlier than usual. She took a taxi instead of the tube, which she normally rode home. Williams followed in an unmarked car. Margaret's taxi stopped at an expensive restaurant in Knightsbridge. She went inside and sat at a corner table. 15 minutes later, a man in a dark suit joined her. Williams managed to get a table across the room where he could observe them. The man gave Margaret a thick envelope. She looked inside quickly, then put it in her handbag. They spoke for about 20 minutes. The man did most of the talking, and Margaret nodded frequently. She looked nervous, almost scared. Before they left, the man leaned in close and said something that made Margaret's face turn white. She stood up abruptly and rushed out of the restaurant. Williams tried to follow the man, but he disappeared into the evening crowd. However, Williams had managed to take several photos on his phone. He sent them immediately to Thompson, who had contacts in the intelligence community who could help identify. Mysterious men in dark suits. The answer came back within an hour. The man's name was Viktor Petrov, a known operative for a foreign intelligence service. He had been expelled from Britain twice before, but somehow always managed to get back in. If Margaret was meeting with Petrov, this wasn't just about money. This was espionage at the highest level. Meanwhile, James had been investigating Lord Ashford's secret meetings. On the fourth day, he finally got a clear look at the person Ashford was meeting in the gardens. It was Edward, the king's private chef, the same man who had been making trips to a mysterious storage facility. James watched as Ashford handed Edward a small package. Edward opened it carefully, looked inside, then nodded. They shook hands and separated quickly. James immediately radioed Rodriguez, who was watching the storage facility that night. Sure enough, 3 hours later, Edward showed up at the facility. He went inside with the package Ashford had given him. He stayed for 30 minutes, then left empty-handed. Rodriguez waited until Edward was gone, then approached the facility manager with his security credentials. "I need to see what's in Unit 247, Rodriguez said. "National security matter." The manager hesitated, but ultimately cooperated. What they found inside the storage unit made Rodriguez's hands shake. There were dozens of leather folders, each filled with documents. Photographs of private royal papers, copies of emails, medical records, financial statements. Everything someone would need to blackmail or destroy the royal family. But there was something else. In the corner of the unit sat a laptop computer. Rodriguez photographed everything quickly, then left without taking anything. They couldn't alert Edward that his hiding place had been discovered. That night, all 4 guards met with Charles at 3 a.m. instead of their usual time. They had changed their schedule as instructed. Charles looked like he hadn't slept in days. "What have you found?" he asked immediately. Williams went first, showing the photos of Margaret with Viktor Petrov and explaining who Petrov was. Charles closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "Margaret has been selling us out to foreign agents," he said flatly. "How long has this been going on?" "We're not sure yet," Williams replied. "But based on her sudden wealth, probably at least a year, maybe longer." Then Rodriguez reported on the storage unit and Edward's involvement. Charles's face grew red with anger. "Edward. He cooks my food every day. He's been in my home for 8 years. He could have poisoned me at any time." Charles stood up and slammed his fist on the table. "How many people have betrayed me?" "How many?" "Your Majesty," Thompson said calmly. "There's more you need to know. We believe Margaret, Edward, and Lord Ashford are working together. They're part of a network, but we don't think they're the ones who sent you the letters." Charles stared at him. "What do you mean?" Thompson pulled out his tablet and showed Charles an analysis he had been working on. "The letters you received were written by someone educated, someone who knows the royal family intimately. The language is too sophisticated for Edward. The information is too detailed for Margaret alone. And Lord Ashford, well, he's the money man. He's been funding this operation, but he's not the mastermind." "Then who is?" Charles demanded. The room fell silent. None of the guards wanted to say what they were all thinking. Finally, James spoke up. "Your Majesty, we need to talk about Queen Camilla." Charles's face hardened. "No, I told you, I don't believe it's her." "Sir, please listen," James continued. "We found out where that £50,000 went. She gave it to a private investigator." Charles froze. "A private investigator? Why?" "We don't know yet. But there's more. That meeting at the Mayfair Hotel? She was meeting with her financial advisor and a lawyer. They were discussing a trust fund. A secret trust fund that nobody knows about. How much money are we talking about? Charles asked quietly. Williams consulted his notes. 8 million pounds? It was set up 5 years ago, before you became king. The money comes from offshore accounts. We can't trace where it originated. Charles sat down slowly. His world was crumbling around him. 8 million pounds? Secret meetings. A private investigator. What else don't I know about my own wife? Thompson stepped forward. Your Majesty, we have a theory. We don't think the Queen is the traitor. We think she's been investigating the traitors on her own. Charles looked up sharply. What? Think about it, Thompson continued. She hired a private investigator 5 days before you received your first letter. She's been moving money around, possibly trying to trace where the leaked information is going. And those Thursday meetings David Morrison has been having with the journalist? We checked further. The journalist is actually working on an article about corruption in royal households. Not this household specifically, but in general. Morrison might be helping him as part of some plan. A plan for what? Charles asked, confused. A plan to expose the real traitors, Rodriguez said. We think Queen Camilla suspected something was wrong months ago. Maybe she noticed Margaret's suspicious behavior or Edward's late-night trips. Instead of coming to you, she started her own investigation. But why wouldn't she tell me? Charles asked, his voice breaking. Why would she keep this from me? James spoke gently. Maybe because she knew you would react exactly the way you're reacting now. Maybe she wanted to have proof before she accused people you trusted. Or maybe she was trying to protect you from the pain of knowing. Charles put his head in his hands. So while I was suspecting her, she was actually trying to save me? We think so, Thompson said. But we need to confirm it. We need to talk to her. No, Charles said firmly. Not yet. We have 5 days left. If she has been investigating on her own, confronting her now might ruin whatever progress she's made. And if we're wrong about her, couldn't finish the sentence, then what do we do? Williams asked. Charles stood up and walked to the window. Outside, London was still dark. But somewhere out there, people were plotting against him. People he had trusted. People he had called friends. We set a trap, Charles said finally. If Margaret, Edward, and Ashford are working together, they must be planning something. They have all this information stored up. They must be waiting for the right moment to use it. We need to give them that moment. How? Rodriguez asked. Charles turned around, and for the first time in days, there was fire in his eyes. Tomorrow, I'm going to announce a private family meeting. I'll say that I've discovered something important and need to discuss it with only my closest advisors. I'll invite Margaret to take notes. Ask Edward to prepare a special dinner afterward, and request that Lord Ashford attend as a family friend. They'll think I've given up the investigation. They'll think they've won. And then, James asked. And then we catch them in the act, Charles said. I'll have listening devices in the room, cameras, everything. When they think they're alone, they'll talk. They'll reveal themselves, and we'll have all the proof we need. Thompson nodded slowly. It's risky. If they suspect it's a trap, they might destroy evidence or flee. It's a risk we have to take, Charles said. We're running out of time. In 5 days, whoever sent those letters will release everything. We need to act now. The guards agreed to the plan. They would spend the next day setting up surveillance equipment and preparing for the meeting. Everything had to be perfect. As they were leaving, Charles called out to them one more time. And find out everything you can about Camilla's investigation. If she really has been trying to help me, I need to know what she knows. After the guards left, Charles sat alone in the dark room. He pulled out his phone and looked at the messages from Camilla. There were dozens of them now, each one more worried than the last. Where are you? Why won't you talk to me? Have I done something wrong? Please, Charles, I'm scared. His finger hovered over the reply button. He wanted to tell her everything. He wanted to apologize for doubting her, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not until he knew the truth. Outside the old guard room, James paused in the hallway. He had heard Charles talking to himself through the door. The king's voice was barely a whisper, but James had caught the words clearly. "Please let me be wrong about her. Please let her be innocent." James knew then that no matter what they discovered in the next 5 days, someone was going to get hurt. The only question was whether the monarchy would survive the truth. The trap was set. Charles had announced the private meeting exactly as planned. Margaret had confirmed she would take notes. Edward was preparing a special meal. Lord Ashford had cleared his schedule to attend. Everything was in place. But 2 days before the meeting, something happened that changed everything. Williams was doing a final sweep of the surveillance equipment when his phone buzzed. It was an encrypted message from Thompson. "Check your secure email now. You won't believe what I found." Williams rushed to his quarters and logged into the secure server they had been using. What he saw made his blood run cold. Thompson had finally traced the origin of the mysterious letters sent to Charles. The IP address led to a computer inside Buckingham Palace. Specifically, it led to a computer in Camilla's private study. Williams immediately called an emergency meeting. At 1 a.m., all 4 guards gathered in a service corridor far from the old guard room. They couldn't risk being overheard. "This doesn't make sense," Rodriguez whispered. "If the Queen is investigating the traitors, why would she send threatening letters to her own husband?" "Unless," James said slowly, "she's not investigating them. Maybe she's working with them." Thompson shook his head. "Or maybe someone used her computer to send those letters. Someone who wanted us to suspect her would have access to her private study," Williams asked. They looked at each other as the realization hit them all at once. Margaret Chen, as the king's personal secretary. She had access to nearly every room in the palace, including Camilla's study. She could have easily used the Queen's computer. "It's a frame job," Thompson said. "Margaret has been setting up the Queen this whole time. The suspicious financial activity, the secret meetings, everything. It was all designed to make us suspect Camilla. But why?" Rodriguez asked. "Why frame the Queen?" James had been thinking about this. Because if the king discovers his own wife is a traitor, it destroys him emotionally. He becomes weak, vulnerable, easy to manipulate. And it creates chaos in the royal family. Chaos that foreign agents can exploit. Williams pulled out his phone. "We need to tell the king right now." "No," Thompson said firmly. "Not yet. We still don't have proof. Just a theory. If we're wrong, we'll have destroyed the king's trust in his wife for nothing. The meeting is in 2 days. We proceed as planned, but now we know what we're really looking for." The next 36 hours were the longest of their lives. The guards watched everything carefully. They noticed Margaret making more phone calls, always in private. They saw Lord Ashford arrive at the palace twice for unexplained visits, and they observed Edward working late in the kitchen, preparing elaborate dishes for the upcoming meeting. But it was what they discovered about Camilla that shocked them most. Rodriguez had finally tracked down the private investigator she had hired. His name was Michael Barnes, a former MI5 agent who specialized in counterintelligence. Rodriguez arranged a secret meeting with him. "I can't tell you much," Barnes said, sitting in a dark corner of a pub in Southwark. "Client confidentiality and all that. But I can tell you that Queen Camilla came to me 5 months ago. She suspected that someone close to the king was leaking information. She had noticed small things. Documents that went missing and then reappeared. Conversations that seemed to be known by people who weren't present. She asked me to investigate quietly." "What did you find?" Rodriguez asked. Barnes took a long drink of his beer. "I found a conspiracy that goes deeper than anything I've seen in 30 years of intelligence work. Margaret Chen is just a small piece. She's been working for Viktor Petrov for 3 years. But Petrov isn't calling the shots either. He's working for someone here in Britain. Someone with power and influence. Someone who wants to see the monarchy destroyed." "Who?" Rodriguez demanded. Barnes leaned in close. "I don't have a name yet. But I know this person has been planning this for years. They've planted people inside the palace. They've created networks of informants. And they've been patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Why didn't you tell the Queen this?" "I did," Barnes said. I gave her a full report 2 weeks ago. She paid me and told me to disappear for a while. Said it was too dangerous for me to keep digging. The people behind this don't hesitate to eliminate threats. Rodriguez felt sick. The Queen has known about this for 2 weeks? Why didn't she tell the king? Maybe she was trying to protect him, Barnes suggested. Or maybe she was gathering more evidence. I don't know. But I can tell you this. Queen Camilla is not your enemy. She's one of the few people trying to save the king. Rodriguez thanked Barnes and left quickly. He called the other guards immediately. They met in the old room at midnight, one night before the scheduled meeting. They decided they couldn't wait any longer. The king needed to know everything. They found Charles in his study at 1:30 a.m. He was reading through old documents, looking tired and defeated. When the guards entered, he looked up with hollow eyes. Your Majesty, Thompson began. We have new information. You need to hear this. For the next hour, they told him everything. The proof that Margaret was working with Petrov, the evidence that someone had used Camilla's computer to send the threatening letters, the testimony from the private investigator about Camilla's own investigation. Everything. Charles listened without interrupting. When they finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he stood up and walked to his desk. He pulled out a key and unlocked a drawer. Inside was a folder that he handed to Thompson. 2 days ago, Charles said quietly, Camilla gave me this. She said she needed to tell me something important, but wanted me to read it first. I haven't opened it yet. I was too afraid of what I might find. Thompson opened the folder. Inside was a complete dossier on Margaret Chen, Edward, Lord Ashford, and Victor Petrov. There were photographs, financial records, intercepted communications, everything. And on top was a handwritten note from Camilla. My darling Charles, I'm so sorry I kept this from you. I wanted to be sure before I broke your heart with the truth. These people you trusted have been betraying you. But I promise you, we will get through this together. I love you. Always. C. Charles took the folder back with shaking hands. She knew. All this time she knew, and she was trying to protect me. His voice broke. And I suspected her. I doubted her. How could I have been so stupid? You were scared, James said gently. Anyone would have been. Charles shook his head. No, I should have trusted her. She's given me no reason to doubt her, and yet I did. What kind of husband does that make me? The human kind, Thompson said. Your Majesty, we all doubted at some point. Even us. The traitors were clever. They knew exactly how to manipulate everyone. Charles looked at the guards with gratitude in his eyes. Thank you. All of you. You've risked your careers, possibly your lives, to help me. I won't forget that. What do we do now? Williams asked. The meeting is tomorrow. Do we still go through with it? Charles's expression hardened. Yes, but we change the plan. We don't just record them. We confront them. All of them. And we do it with Camilla by my side. That night, Charles finally went back to his bedroom. Camilla was awake, sitting up in bed, reading. When he entered, she looked up with sad eyes. Charles, she began, but he crossed the room and took her in his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you. I'm sorry I pushed you away. I'm sorry for everything. Camilla held him tight. You read the folder. I did. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She pulled back and looked into his eyes. Because I knew it would hurt you. These are people you've known for years. People you considered friends. I wanted to have all the proof first so there would be no doubt. I didn't want you to have to question everyone around you the way I've been doing for months. You shouldn't have had to carry that burden alone, Charles said. Neither should you, Camilla replied. She had known about his secret investigation. Of course she had. She knew everything that happened in the palace. You thought I was the traitor, didn't you? Charles couldn't lie to her. For a moment, yes. I'm ashamed to admit it, but yes. Camilla smiled sadly. I don't blame you. They set it up perfectly. The money, the meetings, the computer. It was designed to make you suspect me. But why? What do they gain from turning us against each other? Chaos, Camilla said. A king who doesn't trust his own wife can't rule effectively. A royal family torn apart by suspicion falls apart. And when we fall, the institution falls with us. Charles nodded slowly. Well, they failed. We're stronger together than they thought. Tomorrow, we end this. The next evening, the meeting took place as scheduled. Margaret arrived early to set up her notes. Edward prepared an elaborate dinner. Lord Ashford showed up precisely on time. They all smiled and acted normally, not knowing that hidden cameras were recording everything and armed guards were positioned throughout the palace. Charles and Camilla entered together, holding hands. Margaret looked surprised to see the Queen, but she hid it quickly. "Thank you all for coming," Charles began. "I have something important to discuss, and I wanted to do it in person with the people I trust most." The word trust hung in the air like a challenge. Margaret shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Before we begin," Camilla said, her voice sweet but firm, "I think we should address the elephant in the room. Or should I say the spy in the room?" The atmosphere changed instantly. Margaret's face went pale. Edward dropped the serving spoon he was holding. Lord Ashford started to stand up, but 2 guards blocked the door. "Sit down, Henry," Charles said coldly. "We have a lot to talk about." For the next hour, Charles and Camilla laid out everything they knew. The stolen documents, the meetings with Petrov, the offshore accounts, the storage unit full of blackmail material. They showed photographs, bank records, and recorded phone calls. Margaret tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. She finally broke down and admitted everything. "They threatened my daughter," she sobbed. "They said they would hurt her if I didn't cooperate. I had no choice." "There's always a choice," Camilla said firmly. "You could have come to us. We would have protected your daughter. Instead, you chose to betray us." Edward remained silent, staring at his hands. Lord Ashford, however, was defiant. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," he said. "This is bigger than me, bigger than all of us. The organization I work for has people everywhere. In your government, your military, your intelligence services. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning." "Who are you working for?" Charles demanded. "Who's behind all of this?" Ashford smiled coldly. "I'll never tell you. They'll kill me if I do. At least in prison, I'll be protected by the system." Charles stood up, his face red with anger. "You were my friend. I trusted you. I welcomed you into my family. How could you do this?" "Because you don't deserve to be king," Ashford spat. "None of you do. The monarchy is a relic, a joke. This country would be better off without you." The guards moved forward and arrested all 3 of them. As they were being led away, Margaret looked back at Charles with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty." "I'm so sorry." After they were gone, Charles and Camilla stood alone in the room. The palace felt different now, emptier somehow. The betrayal had left scars that would take years to heal. "It's over," Camilla said, taking Charles's hand. "No," Charles replied. "Ashford was right about one thing. This is just the beginning. There are others out there, other people working against us, but now we know. Now we're prepared." The 4 guards entered the room. They had been watching from the security station, making sure everything was recorded properly. "Your Majesty's Thompson," said bowing slightly. "The evidence has been turned over to MI5. They'll be conducting a full investigation." Into everyone Margaret and the others had contact with. Charles nodded. "Thank you, all of you. You saved more than just my reputation. You saved my marriage, my family, the crown itself." James stepped forward. "Your Majesty, there's one thing we still don't know. The person Ashford mentioned, the one behind all of this. Who are they?" Charles and Camilla exchanged a look. They had their suspicions, but no proof. "Not yet. We'll find out," Charles said. "One way or another, we'll find out who wanted to destroy us. And when we do, they'll face justice." The guards left, and Charles and Camilla walked back to their private quarters. It was nearly midnight, almost 24 hours since everything had begun in that old guard room. The palace was quiet now. The immediate threat was over. But as Charles looked out the window at the dark London streets below, he knew the real battle was just beginning. Someone powerful had tried to bring down the monarchy. They had failed this time, but they were still out there, plotting, waiting for another chance. "What are you thinking about?" Camilla asked, joining him at the window. "I'm thinking about trust," Charles replied. "About how fragile it is, how easily it can be broken, but also how strong it can be when it's real." Camilla squeezed his hand. "We'll get through this. Together." Charles smiled, truly smiled, for the first time in weeks. Yes, together. In the days that followed, the story broke in the media. 3 members of the royal household arrested for espionage. The palace released a carefully worded statement, thanking law enforcement and promising full cooperation with the investigation. They didn't mention the secret midnight meetings or the king's investigation. Those details would remain classified. Margaret Chen was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Edward received 8 years. Lord Ashford got 15 years and was stripped of his title, but none of them revealed who was really behind the operation. That person remained hidden, protected by layers of secrecy and power. As for the 4 guards, they received commendations for their service, though the true nature of their work remained secret. James, Thompson, Williams, and Rodriguez continued their duties at the palace, but now with a special understanding. They had seen the darkness that lurked behind the elegant walls, and they would remain vigilant. King Charles and Queen Camilla's relationship emerged stronger than ever. The ordeal had tested them in ways they never imagined, but they had survived. They had trusted each other when it mattered most. Late one night, weeks after the arrests, Charles returned to the old guard room. He stood in the doorway, remembering that first midnight meeting when everything began. So much had changed since then. So much had been lost and found. He pulled out his phone and looked at Camilla's messages from those dark days. All those worried texts, all that fear and uncertainty. He had almost lost her because he let doubt cloud his judgment. But he hadn't. They were still together, still fighting, still believing in what they represented. The monarchy had survived another attack. It would survive others too, because now they knew what to watch for. Now they understood the price of power and the value of trust. As Charles turned off the light and closed the door to the old guard room, he made a silent promise. He would never doubt Camilla again. He would never let fear drive a wedge between them. And he would never stop fighting to protect the institution he had sworn to serve, no matter who came against him. The king's secret meeting had ended, but the real work was just beginning. Somewhere out there, someone was planning their next move, and Charles would be ready.